Welcome all the devotees for this book launching program today. And amongst us, we have His Grace Shyam Sundar Prabhu, who needs no introduction. And as we know, in the early days of Srila Prabhupada's movement, His Grace Shyam Sundar Prabhu joined the ISKCON movement in 1967, very early days of ISKCON. And Prabhuji was the served Srila Prabhupada as his secretary for several years in the movement. And today he is launching for the first time in India his book, his association with Srila Prabhupada, Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, Volume 1, and in future Volume 2 will come. 2 and 3, and we will hear from His Grace Shyam Sundar Prabhu, his association with Srila Prabhupada, and whatever pastimes he shared with Srila Prabhupada in his book. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Dear old friends, so nice to see you here in Vrindavan after such a long time. I'm going to mostly read from the book tonight, speak a little bit. I thought I would start out by reading the first few sentences in the book. Blood flew from its 4-inch fangs as a feeding jaguar roared just feet from my startled face. I wheeled and ran with Jose, my Venezuelan Indian guide, crashing through the thick jungle, certain the enraged 300-pound beast would be on us in a moment. Krishna, 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 I screamed, not stopping until we'd scrambled to the highest point in a clearing of wind-fallen trees. Now, does this sound like an adventure book? It is. Any accurate description of Srila Prabhupada's activities in this world must be read like an adventure novel, a thriller full of suspense and surprise and drama. Tales of risk and bold daring and discovery and victory, always victory, and the laughter and sweetness that comes with it. Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, Volume 1, is a book describing perhaps the greatest adventure in modern times, the story of Srila Prabhupada's great victories in the world. And we're gathered today, January 20th, 2018, almost exactly 51 years to the date since that day in San Francisco when I first laid eyes on Bhakti-Vedanta Swami's incredible beauty. On January 17th, 1967, that was. How wonderful it is to have survived this long to see the unfolding of Srila Prabhupada's dreams. I have no real qualifications to speak with you guys about high philosophy or anything really. My only qualification to be amongst you angels today is perhaps that I was a witness, a close-up and intimate witness to Srila Prabhupada's historically unique appearance among us. I was the errant but capable child at his feet in San Francisco as he unfolded his plan and taught us the ropes. I was one of the troops in his pirate band, and then his point man raising havoc in far-off lands behind enemy lines. Then I was an officer with troops of my own. And then, most blessed of all, in 1971, I became the secretary, the right-hand man to my spiritual master. For nearly 2 years, I ate, slept, worked, and played at the side of our master, never out of hearing from the tiny bell that he rang to call me. Now, by Krishna's grace, I have survived to be the scribe, the chronicler, to tell the story of our master's deeds. Not just his deeds, but I've painted the strokes of his face, his ever-moving eyes, the grace of his hands as they rise and fall, reject and beckon and guide us to the promised land. Over the past more than 4 years now, I've written 3 big volumes of a book called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. To remember and recall and go as deep inside and relive and describe as best I can my 7 years at Srila Prabhupada's feet. That 17th day in January 1967, Srila Prabhupada stepped through the perfect historical window in time. A time when millions of us young people were looking for God. And he said that God is a blue person. He's beautiful and youthful like we were. And he wears outrageous clothes, peacock feathers in his long hair. And that he dances with beautiful girls. He has a gorgeous girlfriend, and he spends his days sporting with his pals. Wow, now this sounds like God to us. And when we saw the Swami's own physical beauty, and then heard his words with Sanskrit, old words, with ancient authority, he said, I can give you God's name, his address, and his phone number. So sure, we fell for the Swami completely. Here's a passage from my book from the early days, first days in San Francisco. Bhakti-Vedanta Swami is the most attractive person I've ever seen. And this guy only works for Krishna. He's the messenger. So how beautiful Krishna must be. The Swami's physical beauty seems ever fresh and energetic, fueled by a special energy, like the fluid grace you see in youth. The Swami's eyes, his large mouth, his facial expressions, all play together with everything he says. He would break mid-sentence, a dramatic pause, like returning to the tambura dream in the Indian ragas that we were starting to hear. He seems to know everything, and I can't take my ears away. We said, okay, Swamiji, you've convinced us that Krishna is God, and we are his tiny servants, bound to him in what you're calling devotional service. But now, what do we do? And this is the Swami's famous reply. We should always be enthusiastic to try for capturing the rhinoceros. That way, if we fail, everyone will say, never mind, nobody can catch a rhinoceros anyway. And if we succeed, then everyone will say, just see what a wonderful thing they have done. So more than anything else, I remember this, that Bhakti-Vedanta Swami instilled in his early students one overriding idea: to chase the rhino. Dare to pursue the biggest goals for Krishna. And this was the spirit and the subject and the object of all of our activities. Chasing the rhino became the hue and cry of the first generation of the Swami's star-struck disciples. He said two things. You become yourself Krishna conscious, and you spread Krishna consciousness. That's it. Moreover, you become Krishna conscious by spreading Krishna consciousness. This is the secret. 2 for the price of 1. Chase the rhino for Krishna, become Krishna conscious. It's very simple. So in those early days, we had no models. There was no history. There were no maps, no books of instructions, no well-marked trails. We didn't have a very clear idea even what Krishna looked like. We had only the Swami, his words, his personal example, how he had chased the rhino to America as an old man with no money or friends and no plan, really, under Krishna's protection. We saw his photos. He showed us photos of him standing with Indian heads of state. We saw copies of letters he had written to presidents and popes. He never minced words. Each day he said to us, "What I am telling you will save humankind. You must help me change the world." There's another passage from the book. Swamiji had explained in a lecture that Krishna most appreciates devotees who risk the most on his behalf. And if you risk everything for Krishna, he must personally intervene to remove obstacles to your risky service. So most of us in Haight-Ashbury in 1967 were there at great risk anyway, giving up the comforts of homes and educations and careers and society to become outcasts searching for meaning. Many of us had already at a young age traveled widely. We'd taken great risks with drugs and the law, and we'd carved out an independent lifestyle. We dug the message that to get Krishna, you must take risks. So we immediately connected with the Swami's courage vibe. You can say that we were all on a great adventure with the Swami, and it was the most exhilarating adventure of our lives. The Swami was the first Indian person I'd ever met. He was this beautiful creature, this great yogi and saint, the highest man we'd ever met. But he pierced the veil of awe and distance and separateness to embrace our hearts like his own children. Swamiji sits lotus style on a thin mattress on the floor behind a low coffee table, morning sun pouring through the window. I mark his radiance, his beaming, wide-eyed face, his eyes looking straight into mine, the swollen bow curve and tremble of his dark, full lips around big teeth. So beautiful I nearly faint. Motioning me now to scoot over and sit beside him behind the low table. His grace, his fragrance, which I later learn is sandalwood. He slips his glasses from a little case, takes his pen from another case, and brushing my arm with his shoulder, the soft rustle of cotton and jolts of electricity shoot through my neck, and I'm overwhelmed with well-being. Do you know bookkeeping? He asks me. So this was the Swami's management style. Chasing the rhino as risky, high adventure, the theme of our activity. That's one thing. But the activity itself should be practical. Bhaktivedanta Swami harnessed what little practical talent or skills that we had and personally fit them into the larger task. He made you feel important, that your tiny service had huge consequences. So little by little, the Swami gave us 3 precious gifts: someone to love, something to do, and something to hope for. These are the secrets to happiness and successful life. I was so happy to see Gurudas here yesterday. Gurudas and I shared a wonderful rasa with Srila Prabhupada. Laughter. Srila Prabhupada tickled our funny bones constantly. I've just been looking through probably 30,000 photographs of Srila Prabhupada in the research for these books. 30,000 photos. At first, my first comment is, there's not a bad photo in the lot. You couldn't take a bad picture of Prabhupada. And secondly, I would say roughly 80% of the photos where I'm somewhere in the background or Gurudas is somewhere in the background, we're laughing. So here's a passage from the book that describes the Swami's jolly mood from our first days in San Francisco. Right off, one of the things I liked best about the Swami, he made you laugh. He was always calm and content, sure, but more than that, he was jolly. Even discussing very serious subjects, there was often the play of a smile around his lips, a chuckle to make a point. Chuckle by chuckle, building our inner glee. Then suddenly the guffaw, the quick delight. And when he's really surprised by the overtly absurd, a full-rounded belly laugh trembles his body, and tears stream from his tight squinted eyes. He said, "You'll feel yourself transcendently joyful in spite of your present physical body. Just like if you eat, you'll know yourself that you're eating, you are feeling strength, you are getting enlightened. Similarly, if you take this process of Krishna consciousness, in spite of your present physical body, you'll know that you are having something transcendental. That feeling will come with you. Krishna is always jolly. And if you join his society, you will also become jolly." Or this, another passage from early San Francisco. "Whenever you came to the Swami's door, your heart was in your throat. This feeling never left me even after 1,000 trips to that door. There was a heightened sense that something marvelous was about to occur, a tingling in the blood. You never knew what to expect, just that it would be a wonderful surprise, whatever happened. He'd be sitting behind his little table or in his rocker clicking his beads, dressed in saffron or maybe with a white sweater, sunlight through the south-facing window shining on his freshly oiled head, and his face a radiant gold emerging from some deep bliss. And he would welcome you no matter what hour of day or night." Reminds me of another time, speaking of laughter. I asked Srila Prabhupada, "What is laughter? Why do we laugh?" And he said, "Laughter is the difference between what you expect and what really happens." I said, "Prabhupada, why do you make me laugh so much?" And he opened his eyes and said, "Maybe you expect too much from me." Now, most of you have heard some of the stories from those early days in San Francisco, how the seeds were planted for many of the traditions and aspects of our Krishna conscious lifestyle, which 50 years later, perhaps we take for granted as our entitlement. But you must imagine that back then, the Swami planted his seeds in very uncertain soil. Those were crazy times. We were crazy people. And after the amazing events which took place at a very rapid pace in those days, it's wonderful to look back and visualize Bhaktivedanta Swami's power, his destiny as Krishna's point man, that the seeds he sowed took such deep root and flowered to become today's accepted given realities. I've described hundreds of those events in Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, but here's one that seems to stand out as pivotal to the furious spread of the Hare Krishna movement, the appearance of Lord Jagannath in the Western world. Our Haight Street apartment was constructed after the great earthquake of 1906. There was an old iron fireplace with a mantel in the front room. On the mantel, we kept our little doodads and sacred objects, like our God's eye, a couple of photos of the Swami, and some shells and pretty rocks. One day in mid-February 1967, I noticed a brightly painted wooden figurine there, about 3 inches high. What's this, Malati? I got it the other day at Cost Plus. It's from India. There was a whole barrel of them. Well, how much was it then? Well, let's just say that there was a big discount that day. What is it? I have no idea, but it says made in India on the bottom. Aha. My scheming mind began to click. Maybe I can take this up to the Swami, this thing made in India, and ask him what it is. Get closer to him and get some attention. Dropping the doll in his outstretched hand, I said, Swamiji, we found this in a shop. It's from India. Can you tell us what it is? This startled look comes over the Swami's face. He leaps from his rocker and places the doll in his metal trunk and falls down on the floor before it, beckoning down, down to Mukunda and me, who are trying to make sense of this. We bow down beside him. And then he starts praying in Sanskrit, saying, Jagannatha Swami Nayana Patagami Bhavatume, over and over. Flushed and beaming, the Swami rises and asks me, from where have you got this doll? Malati found it. Then tell her to come here immediately. Here's a quote from Malati. I was cooking in the temple one morning when someone came down and said, Swamiji wants to see you. So I turned off the flame and ran upstairs, went in, and Shamasundar and Mukunda were there. And on Swamiji's metal trunk was that figurine. I thought, oh no, I'm busted again. Prabhupada asked, the Swami asked, Malaji, you have found this? Oh yes, a whole barrel full. No, 2 others? Yes, 2 more barrels with different figures. The Swami held up the little doll and said, this is Krishna. Ah, Gurdasji. The other 2 figures will be Krishna's sister, Subhadra, and his brother, Balaram. Bring them. Then we sat, and he told us the story of Lord Jagannath. Seeing Gurdas makes me want to tell another little story. This is an example of the tolerance Prabhupada, the Swami showed us in San Francisco. I'll read it from the book. At morning and evening lectures, we would leave our dogs outside the temple door. By now, there was quite a pack. Ralph, that was my dog. Ketal, that was Gurdas's dog. And a few other mutts owned by various devotees. If the door was open, sometimes the dogs would come inside. And if Swamiji was speaking, he'd stop until they were shooed out. And then he'd launch into one of his favorite themes. Just like animals, you have also got 4 propensities: eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. You eat, the dog must eat. You sleep, the dog also sleeps. And just like dog, you are having sex life and defending yourself. but you have got this human form of life. You have got special ability, consciousness. You can know what is God, who am I, where I am going. This is special. Do not waste this opportunity. You choose dog or God, it is up to you. This was an example of Prabhupada's early tolerance with us. In late August of 1968, the Swami sent 6 of his San Francisco devotees to London. Gurdas and Jamuna, Mukunda and his wife Janaki, myself and Malati, and our little 3-month-old daughter, Saraswati. We knew that the Swami wanted a flourishing center in England, perhaps more than anywhere else in the world, and we wanted to make it the biggest and best of all his centers. And we did it. Sure, we struggled for almost a year, missing Swamiji terribly while we toiled day and night to make something so grand. And finally, with a little help from the Beatles, the Swami's dream was about to come true. This is a story most people want to hear. It's about the recording of the Hare Krishna mantra record, which took the Hare Krishna mantra global. On July 7th, George rings me late in the afternoon and says, "Shamasundar, I'm over here at Abbey Road Studios. We're making our Beatles album here, but John's gotten into a car crash and he's going to be late. So we've got a few hours free in the studio. Can you all come over right away? Let's make a record together." Hare Krishna. Skips him. We make a few false starts. On the first go-around, Jamuna takes the lead, but one voice alone sounds too weak against the many-voiced chorus. Then Jamuna and Mukunda, our 2 best singers, take the lead together on the second cut. But Mukunda's drum, and he's the only one who knows how to play it well, is overbearing, so close to the mic. We try it again, this time with Jamuna and me in duet. This seems to work okay, my weaker voice harmonizing in and around Jamuna's strong contralto. George, fresh from his holiday in Sardinia, shifts from harmonium to guitar and back, and then settles behind his psychedelic sit-down harmonium. Microphones and wires are moved around and balances are struck as Paul McCartney feeds us information from the control booth. I'm on amplified S-Raj. Gurdas and a couple of others with their penetrating kartals are moved further back. We're spread out all over the floor. The chorus is assembled behind some mics far in the back. There were only 8 tracks in those days, so we have to get it right early on. George is restless now, businesslike, the pro. He wants to finish it off. 1 take, 2 takes, and into the 3rd take, we know this is the one. The Maha Mantra leaps off our instruments and tongues and grows and gains momentum and weight and spiritual depth as it whirls in a 3-minute, 30-second package to the end. Bong, as Malati hits the gong. And finally, after 1 year of our extreme efforts, September of 1969, the Swami, he's called Srila Prabhupada by now, arrives in London. September 11th, 1969, Lufthansa Flight 234 arrives from Hamburg at 1340. It's 75 degrees Fahrenheit at Heathrow. The sliding gates part, and in he strides among us, laughing and touching our heads as we bow, garlands piled around his shoulders. Like thirsty refugees in from the desert, we drink in his presence. Srila Prabhupada, our glorious spiritual master. For the Swami's arrival in London, the timing is perfect. His movement has a strong foothold in Britain. Krishna's name is being heard daily over the radio, on the telly, in the newspapers, and in periodicals by millions of people throughout the land. Swamiji has landed in the UK to greet his old disciples and meet his many new ones, and to deliver what I considered his most powerful interview yet to the world press, and then be whisked off in a Rolls Royce with a liveried driver to one of the poshest mansions in England, the guest of one of the most famous people in the world. Prabhupada's 5-story temple in the heart of London is under lavish construction, and money is flowing in. 8 months ago, the Swami had written us, "You have mentioned a very encouraging invitation that my visit there will be the biggest event in London since the time of the Roman invasion." Actually, this will be so. This time there is no question of invasion, but this time if England is prepared, they will receive something sublime which they cannot produce in their country, neither in Manchester, Glasgow, nor Edinburgh. Our dreams of that big event are realized, and Prabhupada arrives in Great Britain like a king. Here's a funny story from those times in London. Gurudas is the star of this story. Srila Prabhupada on the set of Top Pop, the most watched show on Dutch television, as the leader of a famous rock band called the Radha Krishna Temple, with their hit record, Hare Krishna Mantra, at number 4 in the charts this week with a bullet. This time, Prabhupada is not to be held back. In early November, 10 devotees are on a plane with the Swami to Amsterdam. This is the first time most of us have traveled with Prabhupada, and we relish every moment of it, our spirits leaping at this wild adventure with our pirate leader. Gurudas made the deal with them that we would lip sync the mantra on the stage while they played the record in the background. So we're on the stage, cameras are rolling. George is opening slide guitar notes, drone over the speakers, and Jamuna's low voice is barely into Hare Krishna when 6 girls in miniskirts appear below the stage and start dancing the Watusi, the latest dance craze. Then the dry ice machine cuts in and envelops us in fog. And then the strobe lights come on. "Whoa, wait a minute," Gurudas shouts. Prabhupada is relaxed in his overstuffed Dutch armchair over there, a bemused look on his lotus face. "We can't have this, Rien," Gurudas shouts. And Gurudas negotiates a compromise. The wardrobe department finds some colored madras sheets, and we drape them over the girls. We teach them the Swami 2-step, unplug the strobe lights, and allow the dry ice, but we stand up so the fog only reaches to our knees, and the show goes on. At the end of our song, Malati bangs the fake gong they found in the props department, and Prabhupada comes in on cue and delivers a perfect 30-second Krishna conscious capsule, and it's a wrap. Afterward, the Top Pop crew members exclaimed that it was one of the best shows they've ever done. And in the many photos taken by Gurudas that day, you can see the calm confidence and pleasure in Srila Prabhupada's face as he enjoys a day out with his crazy children. We arrived back in London very late that night. Prabhupada is the first Swami to make the hit parade in recorded history. So along with the adventure and the fun and the laughter, the utter jolliness of working for Srila Prabhupada in this way, we got to experience firsthand the magic of Krishna consciousness, Krishna's magic. Around Srila Prabhupada, we began to expect magic. Here's another little story from San Francisco. One day, Malati and I began our day as usual, leaving the apartment building to walk up Ashbury to the 7 a.m. program at the temple, a 20-minute walk away. The streets were abandoned at that early hour, socked in with fog from the nearby Pacific. We walked to about opposite the Grateful Dead house at 710 Ashbury, and we saw a bit of paper coming toward us on the wind. It was a $100 bill, a Ben Franklin. We looked around and saw $100 bills flying everywhere. There wasn't another person on the street. We ran around and excitedly grabbed every bill we could find, and then almost ran to the temple with the good news. Krishna comes through again. With this unexpected money, we not only paid our overdue rent, but Malati also bought a beautiful royal purple carpet to cover the temple room floor, plus lots of groceries for the hippies. Our bare feet were warm and comfy during those cold weather kirtans. We had received literally a windfall and a godsend. The magic. One of the best displays of that magic that surrounded Srila Prabhupada was how George Harrison agreed to print the Krishna book. Have you heard that story? Everyone might have heard that story. This is the best example that I know of Krishna's magic. One day, Srila Prabhupada called me to his room at Berry Place. And that day, I was supposed to go and meet George Harrison at a marble yard to select the marble for our altar at Berry Place. George was prepared to spend several £1,000s for the marble that we selected. And to advise us on the marble, he brought with him a man named David Wynne, who was the sculptor laureate of England in those days, the man who designed the coins, the British coins. He sculpted the busts of Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles. So I was to meet them. And Prabhupada, when I came to his room, he said, "I want you to see something." And he started showing me these pictures, colored paintings, dozens of them. He had a big pile of them. Pictures of artistic renditions of Krishna's stories like you see around this room. We didn't know much about Krishna in those days. Prabhupada hadn't really had time yet to tell us about Krishna, who he was and what his activities. He says, "I've written this book, and I want you to ask George to publish it." I said, "Well, Srila Prabhupada, my relationship with George is based on the fact that I never ask him for anything. Millions of people have their hands outstretched to the Beatles asking them for something. And we're special to him because we've never asked him for anything. I'm worried if I ask him, this will destroy our relationship." He said, "Never mind." He says, "I'll be the bad guy. You just tell him your spiritual master wants you to ask him. I'll take the blame." He said, "And you just watch. Krishna will help you." So we'd bought the marble. We spent the whole day. We were looking at the marble, purchasing it. And then we went to David Wynne's house after. It was dark by now. It was a summer night, but kind of stormy, and for a vegetarian dinner. And then I still hadn't asked George yet. And I thought I'd put it off till after dinner maybe. So we come into the story when David Wynne's wife is named Gillian. As Gillian started clearing the dishes, it's now or never, the party's over. It's a long drive back through the night. I looked across the table to George and said, "George, Prabhupada wanted me to ask you something." I hand the pictures to him across the table. He's been working for a year or so on this big book called Krishna. You've seen all those nice paintings by devotees in his other books? Well, this book has dozens of paintings like these, and it's all about Krishna, his birth, his childhood, all the demons he kills, all of that. Anyway, he wanted me to ask you if you'd print it for him. There, it's out. As I'm explaining all of this, I see his face start to change from happy-go-lucky dinner-time friends and patter about football to serious, and then to angry. And I think, oh, I've screwed this thing up forever now. A brilliant white-blue flash comes through the windows. Boom! The huge house shudders and the lights go out. A lightning bolt has hit the house. It's total dark and silence for maybe 10 seconds. I can hear everyone breathing. Suddenly the lights come back on. Bach starts playing up again in the living room. Everyone's oohing and awing. I look at George expecting the worst, but there's a husky laugh and he's got this huge grin on his face. Well, how much is it then? Shortly after midnight, I pull in front of Berry Place and see that the light's still on behind the blue curtains in Prabhupada's room upstairs. I park, unlock the door, and quietly go up the stairs and timidly knock on Prabhupada's door. Yes, come in, he said. So, what is the news? I bow, and before I can even sit up, I'm blurting out, he says he'll print Krishna book. As I give my excited report about both marble and book, I'm beaming all over, but Prabhupada is just smiling and calm, even after I tell him about the lightning hitting the house. Still, there's that special gleam in his eye. I'm beginning to recognize he's especially happy. And George says he'll be in London tomorrow, Prabhupada, and he'll stop by to see you about it. As I head out the door, Prabhupada says to my back, you see, I told Krishna would help you. So this is volume 1 of Chasing Rhinos with the Swami, San Francisco and London. It's nearly 500 pages, 128 photos. But just to give you a little taste of Volume 2, Volume 2 will tell the stories of Srila Prabhupada's amazing adventures in India, October 1970 to April 1972. And I'll just read one small story from Volume 2 as it pertains to you guys today, because it describes Srila Prabhupada's first visit to Vrindavan with about 40 of his Western disciples in late November, early December of 1971. This is still unedited, but I'm hoping to print this volume later this year, Krishna willing. We walked the golden mica sands along Jamuna River, a straggling band of cheering white geese with the glow and youth of a lifetime of good food and education, led by our peerless Pied Piper. This is where Krishna stole the gopis' clothes, he said, and here is where Krishna killed the Keshi demon. Dr. O.B.L. Kapoor joined us. He was Prabhupada's friend and godbrother since 1932. He was so intelligent, learned and gentle and familiar. We developed an immediate fondness for him. Fog burns off in the first hazy sun. Can we take a bath here, Srila Prabhupada? Prabhupada is sitting on the steps at Keshi Ghat next to his pal, Dr. Kapoor, watching our tentative entry into the freezing Jamuna River. Then he laughs as we splash and whoop, and a few bold Americans swim out into the sacred current. Even the ladies overcome shyness, strip to their slips, and jump in. Prabhupada dhoti up around his knees on the steps. My 2-year-old Saraswati running back and forth at his feet. She wants to go in so bad, but she's still coughing, so I tell her no. Come in, Prabhupada, come on in. He can't resist the temptation any longer. Suddenly, he removes his marigold garlands, takes off his sweater, hands his watch to someone, unbuttons and removes his kurta, stands and wades a few steps out to his waist, pinches his nose, and then swoop! He ducks straight down and under the water. Splash! He reemerges straight up, wiping water from his eyes. As Prabhupada dries off on the steps with a towel, we steal glances at his golden full-body beauty. He's happy as a lark. And then off in the bus to Govardhan for a swim in Bindu Sarovara tank at the base of Govardhan Hill. Then up to Barshana, Radharani's birthplace, where two men carried Srila Prabhupada up to her palace on a palanquin. Make way, the Maharaja returns. He's laughing like a little kid. And then over to Nandigram, Krishna's hilltop childhood home. Prabhupada pointed at Barshana Palace in the distance and told us how Radha would sneak out on moonlit nights, and Krishna would come down from this side, and they'd meet in the middle. Just see down there in that forest between. We are seeing the Brijbasis, the citizens of Braj, living descendants from Krishna's time, with their reverence, their lives patterned by love for Krishna, whose deity stands in every home and in each of the 5,000 temples around town. We dance down Vrindavan's ancient streets, barely wide enough for a bicycle rickshaw, ching, ching, as we step aside to avoid open sewers. Krishna's name is echoed by time-darkened walls. Hari Bol shouts the shopkeepers and the pilgrims we meet. We see majestic temples packed between brick and stucco homes, walled compounds, arcades and verandas, pavilions, alcoves. Iron bars or carved stone screens cover windows against the marauding pink-faced macaque monkeys. A maze of plumbing runs down the sides of buildings, tangles of wire atop every utility pole, where electricity pirates grab their volts. One power company worker tells us that only about 60% of electricity in Vrindavan is actually paid for. Everything seems run down, deteriorated. Parts of the town look almost abandoned. From that day forward, Srila Prabhupada and his pack of angels breathed new life into the holy precincts of Vrindavan. I must also mention this. You may have heard that Bhardraj Prabhu, who personally oversaw the carving of your Radha Shyamasundar and Krishna Balaram deities here in Vrindavan, Bhardraj not only supervised their creation from blocks of marble, but he was the first one to paint their beautiful faces and their beautiful bodies so well. Well, the same Bhardraj has painted also the cover for Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. That's Bhardraj's latest work. Plus all of the artwork for the title pages inside. He was one of Srila Prabhupada's greatest artists, so I asked him to create something magnificent for this artful offering. So I've taken you on a tiny tour through about 1,500 pages, 3 volumes. Just a few highlights in this huge basket of jewels called Chasing Rhinos with the Swami. And I guess if there's one paragraph I've written that sort of sums up the whole thing, it is this. His little bell tinkling even in sleep has become my wake-up call to happiness, transcending all other previous meanings of happiness. I cannot see enough of Prabhupada, the physical beauty of his face, especially his face, captures my eyes from morning till night, and I feast on his endless allure. He trusts me. He depends on me. How can I possibly deserve such mercy? He's in my care, I thought, forcing me to rise beyond all other considerations. I am his audience. He seems to be energized by my laugh. He tries things out. He floats ideas. I'm a sounding board, his straight man. What do you think, Shyamsundar? He catches my glance from across the stage, raises an eyebrow like, how am I doing? His smile, his laugh, especially his laugh, are all that I live for. Is that you, Prabhupada? I'll just flip it off. Thank you. So I humbly request you to take advantage of the long life that Krishna has given me and take a copy of Volume 1 of Chasing Rhinos with the Swami and read it for yourselves, the intimate and detailed stories of Srila Prabhupada's bold adventures, and experience firsthand his beauty and courage, the magic he summons at every moment, and the hilarious fun we had with him. I'll sign the books at the back of the hall after this. And the special Vrindavan launching price today is reduced to rupees 500 only per book. Tomorrow we have another meeting right here at 5 p.m. And I'll read you a bunch of stories from Volume 2 of Chasing Rhinos about India and Vrindavan, Prabhupada's adventures here. Delicious stories. No. Thank you. What is that? As soon as I get the money together from selling Volume 1, I'm self-publishing this thing, sort of like Prabhupada did with his first books. You know? Compared to his struggle, mine has been nothing. But I appreciate much more what Prabhupada must have gone through to create his first Srimad Bhagavatams. He used to, he even had to buy the paper somewhere in a time when paper was rationed and difficult to get. And after buying the paper, he personally escorted it across Delhi to the printer to make sure none of it got stolen. Things like that. What a great struggle and endeavor that must have been to create that first Bhagavatam. And the cover, my inspiration for the cover of Chasing Rhinos came directly from Srila Prabhupada's first Srimad Bhagavatam. I mean, that cover, when we first saw that cover, we thought, wow, this book is really psychedelic. This guy really knows what he's talking about. Anyway, so thank you very much, and I pray you'll help me in this loving endeavor. And all glories to our glorious, beloved Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions or points? Or we have a little time. Yes. What is that? Well, according to your idea of Indian rupee. This book, a similar book in the bookstores in India, is 800 to 1,000 rupees. There are 500 pages, 128 photographs.
Tell them the Mr. French story.
I'm sorry. It's priced in a way that I can also make a profit so that I can continue traveling and talking about Prabhupada. If you are interested in purchasing wholesale quantities, we can talk about a price reduction. Anyway, so I'll be happy to sit back here and sign any books you want. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.